Is Christian Theology responsible for the deaths of 50 gay people in Orlando by a Muslim extremist? The question itself seems ridiculous, but anyone on social media the last couple of days will see that that's exactly what many people are arguing. ACLU, or American Civil Liberties Union representatives, tweeted this.
You know what is gross? Your thoughts and prayers and Islamophobia after you created this anti-queer climate. The Christian right has introduced 200 anti-LGBT bills in the last 6 months, and people blaming Islam for this? No.
I myself was caught debating people on Facebook about how much Christians are to blame for the act of this one Muslim man. There are 3 major arguments that are being raised. The first argument is that Christians say awful things about gay people. And yeah, there are some Christians who do. Many Christians don't say terrible things about gay people, but never are heard from. Unfortunately, the ones who are heard are the ones who say awful things and who tweet awful things. Unfortunately, they're the voices that get heard most by people who are already against Christianity. But these voices aren't representative of anybody except themselves. And is it really fair to attack a whole community based on the quotes of just a few individuals? Think about it this way. Is it fair to say that some gay people say awful things about Christians, but yet we should never judge the whole gay community based on the quotes of a few people who hate Christianity? For example, Dan Savage once compared Catholic politician Rick Santorum to the liquid that comes out of a man who can just engaged in anal sex. And it became so popular it got its own Wikipedia page. And if that wasn't enough, Dan Savage actually spoke at a high school conference, and his topic was against bullying. His talk was so offensive and so hurtful to Christians that Christian students walked out of the room in tears. Now, it's unfair to call the gay community anti-Christian because of the comments of Dan Savage. Why is it fair to say the whole Christian community is anti-gay because of the comments of a few Christians? The second argument that people give online is that the Bible condones killing gay people. But that's not the case. Nowhere in Scripture does the Bible say that we have the right to kill indiscriminately innocent people, like what happened in Orlando. Instead, there are rules about how a theocratic state that God ruled directly had to treat its citizens in a state where everybody claimed to be believers of God. Think about it this way. If we lived in a Christian state where everyone was Christian and everyone agreed to the same beliefs and values, don't you think we'd have different kinds of rules and laws? And how often would these rules and laws be violated if everyone believed the same kind of thing? Remember, God ruled them directly, and He provided supernaturally food and shelter. The Israelites actually saw God's manifestation supernaturally through the clouds or the fire that was there to provide for their needs. Now, if you saw these supernatural manifestations, wouldn't you follow whatever God told you to do? Wouldn't you obey His commands at that point? Absolutely. And how often do you think people would engage in behavior that was harmful or against God's rules in that kind of situation? Not many. Of course, that's not the case today. We live in a multicultural, multi-faith society that Christians help build. Why is that? Because Christians don't want to impose or force people to become Christians. Why? Because they wouldn't be Christians. So there's no desire for us to create a Christian theocratic state to force people to think and act like us. The people who would be living in that state would be living against their will, which is not what we want. Therefore, the rules that applied to ancient Jewish cultures about how they would live when everyone thought and believed the same does not apply to people today. The third argument that people are making online is that Christian opposition to same-sex marriage and gay rights leads to homophobic society that led to the mass killings. Publicly funded reporter Neil MacDonald wrote this in his column on the CBC website. Now, after Omar Matin armed himself, reportedly professed allegiance to ISIS, and went hunting gays in an Orlando nightclub, could there possibly be a better time to have the same conversation about organized religion and what responsibility it bears for the pain and misery and death inflicted on gays for so many centuries in the name of God? And not just the Muslim God. That is happening now because of Matin, and deservedly so. But restricting the discussion to Islam is far too easy. Islam may be more overt about its homophobia than other major religions. Anyone who's worked in the Middle East has heard some fool in high office declaring that there are no gays in Islam and therefore no AIDS. But the fact is, conservative iterations of all the monotheistic faiths are deeply and actively, systematically anti-gay. The sacred monotheistic texts contain prohibitions that would, by just about any legal definition, be considered hate speech in the modern secular world. If casual misogyny and sexist humor helped create Marc Lépine, then organized religion must reflect on helping shape a culture that will this week have led to 50 funerals in Florida. It's not just the extremists who want to deprive gays of human rights. So how can we respond to people like Neil MacDonald? Well, let's go back to basic definitions first. Let's look at how he defines hate. He asserts that the Bible and other religious texts qualify as hate speech based on his modern interpretations of hate. But what does hate mean? It seems to me that hate for him means disagreeing with someone's behavior or beliefs, as Christians do with homosexuality. We believe that homosexuality is harmful, and it's therefore something that God considers sin. It's something that's wrong. Because we believe this activity and belief is wrong, we are considered hateful by Neil MacDonald. But if hate is equivalent to disagreement against someone's behavior or beliefs, then doesn't that mean Neil MacDonald himself is hateful? Let's follow the argument. Hate means disagreeing or disapproving of someone's behavior or beliefs. Christians disagree and disapprove of the beliefs and behavior of gay rights activists. Therefore, Christians are hateful. But let's apply that same logic to Neil MacDonald. He says disapproving and disagreeing with someone else's beliefs and behavior constitutes hate. Neil MacDonald disapproves and disagrees with the behavior and beliefs of Christians. Therefore, Neil MacDonald is hateful. In other words, if hate is merely just disagreeing and disapproving of other people's beliefs and behavior, everyone in this debate is hateful. But I don't think anyone actually believes that that's what hate really means. In fact, Canada's laws are very stringent when it comes to hate crimes. They can't just be mere disagreement with someone's beliefs or behavior. When we look at what Neil MacDonald is actually arguing, what he's arguing is that everyone has to agree with his theological position on sexuality, otherwise they're hateful. And that sounds pretty intolerant to me. In fact, there's another group of people who justify their behavior against Christians because they say Christians are just hateful people who should just adopt their values. And you know who that is? That's ISIS. Those are the people killing Christians in the Middle East, justifying their behavior because they think Christians should just conform to what their society says. None of these arguments actually show that Christian theology is responsible for what happened in the tragic events in Orlando. And it's frustrating that we even have to create a video that makes the case that Christians aren't responsible for the actions of a Muslim man. But it's also a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to remind our culture what Christian theology really is about. It's about loving our enemies, doing good to those who persecute us, and loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. Why? Because that's what Jesus did for us. So next time someone makes these arguments online or in person, remind them and show them what real Christian theology is. It's from a God who tells us what truth is, and a God who also weeps over the deaths of innocent people.